Hello everybody, welcome to another video. So today we're going to talk about comping. Someone requested this video a few months ago, so I hope you're still watching my channel. Be sure to like, be sure to subscribe, it really helps. Or if you want to support me, check out something on DC Music School, on SoundSlice, check out my books. I have lots of good things. Anyway, it's a continuation of last week's video. Last week I talked about 1930s, 1940s style, swing style accompaniment used in gypsy jazz, but also in American jazz. It was highly philosophical because that's the nature of accompaniment. It's you have to make certain artistic choices. That's what we're going to talk about here. Comping in the more contemporary usage of the term. So the way you would expect someone to comp when you go to your average jam session in New York, Paris, London, Tokyo, whatever. Okay? This is highly subjective. So I'm going to talk about a few different things and hopefully give you some ideas to think about. It's think of this as a masterclass in how to listen to music and how to, I guess, form your own opinion so you can decide for yourself what's appropriate. One thing that I always say is that there's a difference between an instrumentalist and a musician. An instrumentalist can be very accomplished, can know lots of things, but can be a very poor musician. And a good musician can be, well, maybe not a poor instrumentalist, but a decent instrumentalist, but a very good musician. And that's what matters more when it comes to comping. I go to a lot of jam sessions. Like, the ability is very high. On average, the instrumental ability is very high. But the musical ability, if I can be very honest, is on the lower end of the spectrum. From time to time, I'm very surprised to see some very good musicians, but for the most part, a lot of them are just not good musicians. They know so much, but they don't know how to use it. For me, it's kind of like free speech. Just because you can say something doesn't mean it's always appropriate to say it in that moment. I'm a very strong believer in the idea that we should be able to express ourselves, but we should express ourselves intelligently, strategically. For me, comping poorly is like being super socially awkward, saying very, I guess, not necessarily offensive things even, but like questionable things, like, is that necessary to talk that way? Just, it makes most people kind of like cringe. And I guess it makes sense. A lot of jazz musicians are not always socially normal, myself included, but I think I've learned a little bit. I like to think so anyway. But yeah, it's the same thing, so we're going to talk about that today. So what you saw in the beginning was me accompanying Cyril Aimé, and I want you to know that I actually did not prepare anything in advance. I just chose a random song. Of course, I was the one recording and everything, but I'm not the one who edits the videos and everything. So even though I recorded this a long time ago, what was it, like almost 2 years ago, I don't remember what she sang in her improvisation. So I just press record and I react. And So the song was But Not For Me. And this is a very interesting song because there are a few ways to play the song. And often instrumentalists, quote unquote, play the first, it's A, B, A, C. The B part, they often play wrong. Now, of course, in a real situation, we would be interacting with each other. But here it's me reacting to her solo. So there's already in unrealistic component to this, but bear with me. So I'm reacting to her improvisation, and I'm not sure what she's thinking in her minds. For those of you who follow my channel, I talk a lot about this concept of harmonic direction. This idea that you can superimpose a lot of changes regardless of what the rhythm section is doing. This is something that is very, very easy to do for instrumentalists because we don't have to really, use our ears to tune our notes. We can just put our fingers there and the notes will come out. Whereas with singers, they have to really, really concentrate. They have to really use their knowledge of relative pitch and or perfect pitch to get the tones to come out. And so if you're accompanying a singer, that's the reason why I chose it. If you're accompanying a singer, you have to be very, very mindful of this, and you don't want to negatively affect the singer. So you have to find this balance between being able to comp and support the singer. That comping means supporting thing, but what I mean by comping, by kind of wanting to do your cool things, so to speak, because they're cool, but at the same time not screwing over the person that you're supporting, right? So what I did, one way to play the song is to do 2 dominant in the key of F, to dominant, to 1 for 2 bars, then the same chord progression. Now before that, some instrumentalists like to put a D7. You may have noticed that when I was comping for her, I was just listening to see what she was doing, and just to hear her idea of the changes. That's why I kind of left it somewhat empty when there was like an opportunity to play a D7 or any other chord. Then I played G7 again, C7, and then I noticed that in the first A going to the B, so this is another typical bebop thing, the changes are supposed to go G7, C7, F, and then quick 2-5 or just a 5 to 4. But she skips the 1 altogether and goes straight for the 5. So I listened to that and I kind of reacted appropriately. Because I don't know if the changes that she's using in this first chorus, I'm just reacting. Hopefully in a real life setting, if we're in a band together, we're gonna do a concert, we're gonna talk about changes beforehand, then I will know. But here I don't. And that happens a lot in jam sessions. I meet a singer for the first time. I don't know the changes that they're going to use, so I have to be very, very mindful of this. Okay, then going to the B section, we have B flat, 4 minor, then 1. And this is where a lot of instrumentalists play quote unquote the wrong chord progression. After the 4 minor 1, then you can maybe put a D7 maybe. Well, actually, it's supposed to be G minor because the melody, it goes to B flat. But a lot of instrumentalists have turned it to G7 just to make it more, interesting to solo over. So I wasn't sure as a singer what she was gonna do, but I heard she did this. She was thinking G7. She was thinking like an instrumentalist in her improvisation. So then I played G7 accordingly. From this alone, then I knew how the rest of the song was gonna be. So then I reacted accordingly. I tried to stay out of her. Well, because it's a recording, she's not really listening to me. But in a live situation, the first chorus I would try to play simple chord voicings. I didn't play anything like I could have done. I could have done all these weird voicings, but no, I played very, very, very simple chord voicings. And try not to add too many of those extra tensions, 9, 10, 9, 13s, whatnot. Just really basic ones. And from time to time, yes, I will do little things here. I also made sure to keep my rhythmic stabs fairly staccato. so that if the soloist were insisting on a note and I wasn't careful enough, it wouldn't clash too much. So lots of things you can do to think about here. So there we go. That was, but not for me. So the thing about comping is that in the original definition of the term, if I'm not mistaken, comping should mean supporting a musician. What is it that you're trying to do when you're comping? Are you trying to support the musician that's soloing, or are you trying to show off? I think it should be the former. You want to support. And in general, when I play with people, I try not to get in the way. That's really what I try to do. But then how to comp, there are so many different ways, different situations, different players. It's just like what I said last week. The best way to learn how to comp with musicians is to play with good musicians and to get feedback from them. If you're playing with someone that you highly respect, then you should listen to what they have to say. Even if maybe you don't 100% agree with their philosophy. It's their gig, they're paying you. That's why Sonny Rollins, I think he often complained about piano players who I'm paraphrasing, but it's like I said, pianists are able to usually do so much, but not so many of them are able to do it at the service of the soloist. That's really the biggest problem with the piano. And that's why he said he preferred guitar players like Jim Hall or whatever. So the comping that I'm mainly talking about in this video is the comping that is at the service of the soloist. Now there is another style of comping that is highly interactive. That's where anything goes, where everyone is like, where the soloist and the rhythm player, the accompaniment, are taking kind of like almost equal space, to the point where the comping is highly influencing what the soloist might do. This kind of accompanying exists. It's more of a modern thing. Some people like this, but I think in order to do this kind of comping, every musician has to be very, very musically mature and musically advanced in all ways. And like I said, since in my opinion most people are not advanced musicians, I think a lot of people who try to do this do it very poorly. A good example of musicians who do this well, there's the Mireille Legrand and Sylvain Luc duo. Unfortunately, Sylvain passed away. In that case, great, go for it. In that kind of comping, I mean, I could say some things, but there are, I guess, fewer rules, so to speak. Here we're talking about the other kind of comping where you want the soloist to feel as free as possible and not have to worry about what you're doing, and where they can just listen to you and basically feel inspired and also not get lost. But again, I say that, but sometimes I do those chords because sometimes I want to have a little bit of fun, but I always listen. I try always to put those fancy chords in the right moment when the soloist is maybe not playing too many notes or things like that. How I choose to comp highly depends on the other musicians. So the drummer, the bass player, is there a pianist or not? Or is there even a drummer or not? Like, what's the instrumentation? If it's just a duo, then I usually have to take a little bit more space. Like, I have to do the bass and everything. Sometimes let's say it's on leaves. Something like that, where I play more bass notes. Whereas if there was a bass player, I might just comp this way. And then I can, if I want to be a little bit rhythmical, I have little tricks, you know. Or things like this. Little tools and tricks to fill up the space, so to speak, to take over the role of the drummer, the bass, the piano, everything, all at the same time. If I'm playing like a bossa tune, if there were a bass player, you know, like Girl from Ipanema, I might just be like... But if there were no bass player, at the bass note. Things like this to be aware of. How to react appropriately. So we see there are no rules. It all depends on the circumstances, the musicians you play with, etc. So let's look at another example. I'm going to play rhythm for Andrew Marzotto. I chose a random tune. It's going to be a blues in F. And I will play and I'll react. Welcome back. Alright, so he's a very, very modern player, also a busy player. And so generally, again, I start off because I don't know how he's going to play. I know he's a modern player, but I'm not exactly sure what kind of substitution he's going to use. So I mainly use very simple chords. Actually, I don't remember anymore, but like here, or stuff like this. 2, 3 notes. Then sometime towards the second chorus, he starts to get really, really active, especially with chords. And then at one point, I think when it gets to the 4 chord, he starts playing so many chords that I just laid out. But he also does some little rhythmic figures that I can predict, so I react accordingly. But because I'm not sure what chords, I know that he's prone to use lots of substitutions. I mainly played very, very simple chords, few notes, so that even if it's a substitution that has nothing to do with the chord that I played, it might not clash so much. And I also kept it fairly staccato. But again, that's me reacting to him. If we were together and there was a band, probably he'd also listen to me, and I might affect how he plays as well, influence how he plays. And so I have to be careful not to overdo things, so as not to, how do you say, it's kind of like a conversation where I'm the interviewer and he's the one answering the questions. Now, there's some interviewers who take so much space, and in which case it becomes a bad interview. But I think a good interview will every now and then ask a little question, ask for clarification, and let the other person do all the talking. So it's this kind of balance that I'm going for. It's not a debate where both sides are taking equal space. I hope that's a good analogy. So this whole staccato thing and whatnot. And then when you play ballads, that's a whole other thing as well. That's where you can take a little bit more space. Maybe you can play fuller chords and everything. We're going to try this with Jimmy Bruno over Body and Soul. But when I record ballads for DC Music School, just so that it's easier to transcribe, we don't really do it full, real ballad style. We do it double time. But anyway, let's see what happens. Again, I don't know how he's going to play. And also, I know there are like little different chords you can use here and there. So I'm not sure what's going to happen. Let's find out. Okay, it's fairly bread and butter. I did notice some little discrepancies in the way some chords that I played that didn't always perfectly match what he did. But again, this is perfectly normal in jazz. One thing I should say is you don't want to step on the other person's toes. But because we're improvising, it might be normal. It happens that, things clash. And then you just have to work with what you have. If it clashes, that's usually what I usually do is I keep the chord fairly short so that the dissonance isn't too noticeable. Like for example, let's say the first chord is E flat minor. If he's like really insisting on the note D natural, which is the major 7, but I'm playing minor 7, and I'm doing like this. As soon as I hear the D natural, I probably just let go. Then it'll work. So I did I don't think he necessarily did that too much, but at one point I thought, maybe I shouldn't play D minor, E flat minor 7, and I switched to this one, which is even more bread and butter. And little different things like that. But I remind you once more, this is me reacting to him. If we were together, if I played something like this, and me, let's say he's the one copying for me, and he plays this, and I'm kind of I want to insist on this note as a soloist, but me, because I hear him playing this, even if I play this, I'll right away change the note. It works. So you have to really think fast. Reacting. This is like the real interactive aspect of jazz. Let's look at yet another scenario. It's the idea of playing chunk 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 rhythm over the soloist. Now, this only works if the bass player and the drummer are playing in a way that I guess supports this style of rhythm playing. If they're playing very open and whatnot, that rhythm, this chunk 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 rhythm doesn't work. But what I want to talk about here is a lot of modern contemporary guitar players are often playing in what they think is kind of like what they learned at school or they read in articles, is the Freddie Green way, where they play fewer notes, maybe one note or two notes. I also do that a lot of times. But one thing that I think most players don't do nowadays, I'm probably one of the only one, and I get a lot of good feedback from it when I do it. But you have to do it carefully and you have to listen. It has to be you have to do it the old style where you play thicker chords. In this case, it's less about harmonic comping. It's more about adding this extra layer of grease to the drums and to the bass. And so the harmonies that you play are not necessarily as important as long as you're playing the basic skeletal chords. Because in the old days, in the 30s, when there would be a pianist doing like a stride piano, there would be a bass player, and there would be a guitar player, they're all doing, it sounds all basic, but it's just adding this greasy, this gritty sound to it. So I played Honeysuckle Rose. I keep it very staccato as well. Here I'm trying to lock in as much as possible with the drummer and bass player. And it just adds this kind of like an organ playing the walking bass with chords that has this greasiness to it. It's almost distorted. Almost sounds like rock and roll. I guess swing music of the 30s is kind of like the rock and roll. It's heavy and it makes you kind of want to dance. So that's what I'm going for. And also mix it in such a way, in a kind of a realistic way. So when you hear this, you'll notice that you might not be able to discern the exact voice I'm playing because it's mixed. It's like I'm trying to blend it as much as possible with the other instruments and give room to the solo. So my volume is a little bit lower. Therefore, if I play kind of chords that are not always 100% perfect with what the bass player or the pianist is doing, it doesn't really matter. You're just hearing kind of like an effect somewhere. So this is really the subjective nature of things. It's this balance of us. I get it. We want to be hip. So do I. We want to do like cool chords and everything. But you have to find that balance. You want to support the musician as well. And this is going to require a lot of thinking, a lot of self-critique, and the willingness to accept feedback. I highly recommend that you get the opportunity to play with really proficient musicians and be willing to ask them for feedback. Hopefully you can also play with them in a professional setting where they will be more likely to give you feedback. When you listen to your favorite recordings, listen to the comping and ask yourself, do I like this recording? Why is it that I like this recording? What is it that the rhythm section is doing that I like? Really ask yourself these questions and try to answer them for yourself. There is a way for piano players and guitar players to coexist, to comp at the same time. You can check out certain Wes Montgomery recordings where he's playing with Wynton Kelly and they're comping together, they're doing things together. It works. You just have to be very smart about it. And then depending on who you play with, sometimes the best thing that you might be able to do is not even play at all. Sometimes that happens for me. When I think everything's all over the place, and if I were to play something, it would lead to chaos, I usually don't play. But sometimes I can hear that people are lacking confidence. What I will do, I will often switch to this chunk rhythm to try to bring everyone together. So two things either happen. It works, everyone hears me because I'm being very confident but also not overbearing. So everyone hears my confident pulse and gravitates to what I'm doing. So when that happens, that's great. We're back on track. Or the second thing is, no matter what I do, even if I try to bring together, no one's listening to me and it's even more chaotic, I will hear this almost right away after a bar or two, then I'll stop. And then I just try to survive that jam session. We're talking about jam sessions here. In a professional setting, this will never go. Like, we will never hire like bad musicians, right? Okay, yes. I think it's very important to understand harmony. And I'm not talking about harmony like the way they teach in music school. All of that's great. Like, this is a 2/5, this is 3/6, but to understand stylistic interpretation. Because if you're going to be playing in the old style, you should use old style chords. If you're playing I Can't Give Anything But Love in the old style, it makes no sense to play G major 7 if you're in the key of G, to play these chords. If you want to play old style, depends. If you want to do like early 30s style, like this, or just a little bit mid 30s to 40s. Right? You can use those chords. You know, the B section to Have You Met Miss Jones, if you played it in the 30s, the way, what's his name? Benny Goodman recorded it. I don't even remember what key he did it, but like most jazz players, they do it in the key of F. Most contemporary jazz players, they'll play C minor 7, F7 to B flat, to A flat minor 7, D flat 7, G flat major 7, E minor 7, A7. But in the 30s style, it will be just like this, B flat. skip the 2 chord altogether. Go straight to the 5. The same thing with what is this thing called Love. And even Oscar Peterson, who recorded in the 40s, he's using the chord changes from the 30s. It's not G minor 7 flat 5. It's actually just C7. What is this all alone? Simple as that. Night and Day, 2 ways to play it. The original is just B major, but B triad. B major, not major 7, but just major. That's in the style. Now if you want to play more modern, yes. But of course there's also E, F minor 7 flat 5. So to be artistically aware in that sense, very few jazz musicians know these things. So that's a very, it's something that's not really talked a lot about. I talk about it in my harmony course on Sound Slides. I think I'm one of the only teachers who talks about harmony from a historical perspective. The reason for this is that the vast majority of contemporary jazz players have not really studied early jazz harmony. They've mainly studied jazz harmony starting from a certain era. So it's good to know such things. And then to be aware of harmony in this way allows you to make artistic choices so that you're playing chords with intention and not because it's what you know how to do. That's what I think is very, very important when it comes to accompaniment. So, like I said, just because you can't doesn't mean you should. When you're playing with instrumentalists, you have more liberty to play quote-unquote weird chords, but when you're playing with singers, you have to be very careful, especially when you're going to be singing the melody, to give them the tones that will help them. This is something that I've seen. Singers who cannot find the good singers, through no fault of their own, who cannot find the notes to Wave, to Girl from Ipanema, and other songs like that. This is not their fault. I've seen this. It's often the fault of the pianist or the guitar player. Let's say you're playing Wave. And then you play this chord. This is very, very hard to find the note as if you're a singer. Because the note is... this is the first note. You're playing a flat 9, but it's actually starting on the 9th of the chord. Not easy. Same thing with a girl from... I went to a jam session, like the piano player, supposed to be a very good piano player. I mean, highly skilled, but bad musician. I don't remember what chords he was playing, but it could be like, you know... How are you going to find this note? How's a singer going to find this note unless they have like perfect pitch or super, super good relative pitch? Most of them don't have such acute level of relative pitch. If it were up to me, well, first of all, I do this. Or even just give them the note, first of all. I just tell them this. Whenever I play with singer, if I know the melody to the tune, I just play the first notes for them. And I play a chord that's appropriate. All of me. If you're playing this voice and the singer's all. Triad's fine. And if you know the melody, then you can also comp more effectively with the singer. So all of me here. All of me, wanna take all of me. Da, 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 da. I can do this. I can also do D minor, sus, but I can also do A7. Da, 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 da. I can play this chord because I know it's this. Da, 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 da. Or at the end of all of me, where it goes, you took the part. It's always on the 6th. So I either just not even play this, it's just a try. You took the path that once was my heart. But if I wanted to help them with the notes, then I can play the 6 as well. Here. You took the path. It would be a mistake to play minor 7. You took the path. You hear? You took the path that once was my heart. Once was my heart. And here's another mistake that people do. It's like, once was my heart. Play a flat 9, but it's a regular 9. So why? The original version. This is the original. The original version goes to F minor or D minor 7 flat 5 if you want. But most people do A natural, so D minor. So why not take all of me? There we go. Knowledge of harmony. Check out my harmony course on Soundslice. I guess what I'm getting at is to play music with purpose, with great understanding of the music you're trying to play, and not to treat it as like, you know, a number, like a series of like chord symbols and whatnot, trying to make sense of the music, trying to understand what style you're going for, who you're playing with, what's the most appropriate way to convey that style, etc., etc. So hopefully this gives you certain ideas to think about. I suggest that it would help me a lot that you send this to all your jazz musician friends, because this is a very, very important thing so that we can make better music together. I travel the world all the time. Well, not the whole world, but like a lot of different places. I've been to jam sessions in so many different countries, so many cities. It's always the same story. Now some cities are better than others for sure. But what I always see is these very, very, very good instrumentalists, but very, very, very poor musicians. And I think, just in my opinion, it's better to be a good musician than a good instrumentalist. Because good musicians, like I said, they're not poor instrumentalists. They're usually decent instrumentalists. And decent is already good. But you can be above average instrumentalist, but very poor musician. Which one would you choose? Let me know.